Far away. Whatever you want to ask.
Good morning, everybody. I got Pete Nicholson. I've known Pete for, how long have I known you, Pete?
About 11 years, 10, 11 years.
11 years.
I think so.
Yeah. And I first met Pete when I sold one of his companies 11 years ago. He has since owned and operated a couple pool companies. So I thought I'd get him on here to talk about what matters in pool companies, how to decide their value from an operator standpoint. And then you can tell by his accent, he's from overseas. So I want to have him lead off a little bit with how he got here, a little bit about immigration and E2 visas. And with that, Pete, just give us a quick 5,000-foot history of how you got here and the whole visa process.
Well, first of all, we did a change of status on our B1, B2 visitors visa. Mm-hmm. And once we'd done a few years here, we then applied for the full E2 visa, which we've now done 3 renewals on. The first renewal was 3 years they gave us, and then 5 years for the next 2 renewals. But the system works. It's an expensive system. It costs us money, but to the same token, we're treated quite well at the embassy. There's no real problems.
Yeah. What when you first came over, you just were on a normal tourist visa? You hadn't bought anything?
Well, we bought part of my brother's company, and he was already over here.
Okay.
So we sort of sided into working with a family member and carried on from there.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, basically when you come into the States, you're on a B2 visa, which is a tourist visa, and you stay it's usually stamped for 6 months, right?
Yes, 6 months in any 12-month period. But if you speak to different immigration officers, there's 2 or 3 different ways that they measure that.
Right.
And that can be 6 months in 12 months, 6 months in a calendar year, 6 months that starts from the date it starts.
Well, 11 years ago was back when it was kind of crazy at the London embassy, and there was that consulate officer who was kind of a knucklehead. But you were able to do the change of status and get in quick, right? How long was that? Like 10 days to process the whole thing?
You mean processing from the time that we gave them our passports, or processing? Yeah, from the time we gave them our passports. I mean, it's a lot quicker now.
Yeah.
When we renewed the visa nearly 2 years ago now, literally the passport was back within 48 hours. And the problem used to be, and if you err on the side of caution, then what you do is book 2 weeks, basically stay, a 2-week flight going back to the UK. And that's what it used to be, because you used to get your passport back after most probably about 10 days.
Right.
But as I say, I got my passport back on the second day. I handed it in on day 0 and got it back on day 2. And I was picking it up at 8 o'clock in the morning on the second day.
Right.
So the turnaround is extremely quick now.
So before we go on to the pool portion of this, what are the mistakes that people make when they come here? Or what don't they know when they get here? Or don't expect?
People expect that it's going to be easy to work here, to gain trust. You arrive possibly with a lot of, integrity, but people still see you as just another business owner that want to get their buck. So it is something you have to build up. I'm quite lucky, the same as you, Mike. I'm ex-military, so I do things 1, 2, 3, and people tend to like that 99% of the time. They just want to know that whatever you say you're going to do it when you say you're going to do it.
Right.
And then you're going to charge them the amount you said you're going to charge them at the start.
So when they come over, what don't they realize? I mean, I know I brief them a lot on, like, hey, you don't have a credit rating. Hey, you have to go buy a car. It's going to be cash. Any lessons learned that, you've done this a couple of times with people buying some companies from you? What are the mistakes they make, or the confusion they have? Right?
Well, we've had, as you know, the 2 sides of people buying companies from us, Mike. Firstly, we had the property management company, which was bought by an American couple.
Yep.
Lovely couple, lovely family. The transition was simple, and we stayed with them and helped them per se, and carried on doing pools for them for 3 years after the fact. And so that was really good. That was really smooth. They had no problem money-wise, credit scores, etc. And their credit lines were really easy, which they already had from owning companies before.
Right, as opposed to the E2 buyer who...
Yeah, the E2 buyer, which is just, at the end of last year, we sold a company. And basically, they can't get a credit score. They can't understand why they can't get a credit score. They've got very good credit scores in South Africa and Namibia, where they came from. And they hit a brick wall, but didn't realize, and they didn't listen. We told them that they would hit a brick wall and they had to have their working capital, etc., behind them. And they thought it would be simple and people would just rent them a house. They'd lend them money, and everything would be simple. And, they didn't need to follow the way we did things because, they were going to be liked because they were nice people. And it unfortunately doesn't work that way.
Right. So like the biggest mistake when people are planning their trip over from any country is a lack of understanding how credit plays to operating their business and having reserves for working capital. So like if you're going to rent a house at the peak of the real estate market, right? As an expat, you probably got to have 3 to 4 months worth of deposit because Americans view you as a risk because you don't have a credit score.
Exactly. And when we came here, we were very lucky. We already owned 2 properties anyway. So we had bank accounts, etc., behind us, and the mortgage already in place. We just moved into one of our houses and rented the other one out as part of our management portfolio.
Right.
But, people just need to listen to the advice that they're given by guys like yourself at the business brokers end of it, and also listen to the people that are on the ground, and have local knowledge.
Which leads to that whole cash flow portion of it leads to somewhat of the pool business, the property management business, and the service sector, and how a great deal of the expats come in. And I know when they come to see me, they go, I want to buy a restaurant. And I want to buy this because that's what I do in the UK or France or Jordan. I'm going, all right, well, we need $100,000, right? Because you got to have a deposit for your home. You got to have deposits for your house. You have to have deposits for the vendors, because all orienting around that credit line. And you'll see a lot of expats like yourselves who move into the service sector because of the speed of the payments and how fast you get paid. So you're not laying out, dollars that you really don't have. 45 days of cash flow or waiting on a payment can kill a business at the small level if you don't have the reserves.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of my watchwords or phrases was always, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Right.
And people don't understand it. And, point in fact that you'll say, to keep the software that you're using and carry on doing things the way that you've always done them, and they'll have no problems. But, people try to reinvent the wheel again, unfortunately.
Right. And deciding, and that's one of the things is, yes, you buy a business and you own a business, but there's this, yes, you just bought a business and you want to put your personal mark on it. But when you do that, you disrupt customers, you disrupt and spend money that you don't have relative to cash flow, right? Like,
correct.
$1,000 for software seems like a small number, but if there's already stuff in place, you should leave it alone and save the $1,000 for a rainy day.
And people are used to paying their invoices the way they've always paid them. So if you possibly change the way you do things, if it doesn't affect the end user, then they may take that, and it's just a little bit of pain. But if somebody's always paid you every month by a little link that they get emailed by us, and then suddenly you say, no, you've got to send us a check. Right. But that customer then lives in England or Ireland or France or Germany.
Right.
It's not that easy just to send you a check.
Yeah, you made something that was convenient inconvenient.
Yes, exactly.
So another tip is, it's not about you, it's about the customer. And you may have bought something, but it's got nothing to do with, particularly in goodwill, when there's very few assets, you can't disrupt the customer. If anything, you need to make it more convenient for them.
Yeah, the customer is always right, and the customer knows that they're right.
Right.
And they've got hundreds of other vendors that they can go to if they don't like the way that you've changed.
Right. They got choices.
Yeah.
So that's E2 visas and what not to do. Let's kind of go through pool service 101 and pool repair 101. Can you take me through, hey, here's the fundamentals of cleaning pools, how they make money, in 10 minutes or less, and why it's a good business?
It's a good business because it's very easy to measure. If you're charging like we've always done, we've always charged around about $100 a month per pool that we service, depending obviously on size. And whether it's got a lanai screened area, we charge a premium if we've got to fish and vacuum leaves out there every week.
Right.
So it's very easy to measure that if you've got 100 pools, you're going to pull in at least 10,000 a month.
Right.
Out of that 10,000 a month, then you've got your overheads, which is, in our case, we've always paid ourselves, and we've always been on the American system, both, pension-wise, and Medicare, Medicaid. We've always contributed to it, even though we're not claiming anything against it. We've always had our own medical insurance.
What Pete's saying is he's paying himself a salary.
Right? Yeah, correct.
Right. I got to translate that to the Americans are going to want. Right.
Yeah, but we pay me a minimal salary. The rest is done as God, I can't remember the name of it. Share,
distributions.
Yeah, sorry, that's right. Yeah, distribution. And that's more efficient. We're an S-type corporation, which we converted to after about 3 years of being a C-type corporation, which is much better from a tax point of view, earnings point of view. You only basically pay taxes once.
Right.
But from the actual pool service side of it, you do the same thing that you always do every week when you go there. And you teach the people that are buying your new company, we've always given at least a month's training, etc. And we never shy away, we never back away. I still do repairs for 2 of the last pool companies that I've sold. Sure. I still do repairs for the people that bought them. So it's a good revenue stream for me, and it's a good profitable
for a new owner. It's important to what's the customer want? The customer wants a clean pool, and they want consistent performance. So how do you make sure the pool stays clean all the time, or is that reasonable?
Well, it's reasonable unless you get something like Hurricane Sandy coming over,
right.
or Irma,
right.
which was the worst one for us.
Yeah, so the customer expects a little bit of a hiccup.
Yeah, and we decided at a very early point when it was actually announced that was heading towards us that we weren't going to charge the owners extra money to clean up the pools. And we didn't. We charged them the normal. We were there for maybe an hour at each pool by the time all the debris and that was pulled out. And we just didn't charge the owners extra money, whereas a lot of the companies in the area, I'd say a good 90% of them, just doubled their fee for that month.
What was the strategy behind that?
We're all in it together, basically, and it's not their fault that we've got to work harder, so we just charge them the normal monthly. And yet again, a lot of people actually lost service because they did that, thinking that they were being clever and that everybody else was doing it. We didn't. We actually gained more pools by actually being trustworthy and just honest.
Right. So you mentioned lanais. What does the lanai do to the pool? I mean, I kind of know the answer as it relates to cost, but could you explain why it cost? You clean a pool, you clean a pool. If it has a lanai, or it doesn't have a lanai, why is having a lanai going to be a cheaper price than not having a lanai?
Well, we call it a lanai. It's a screened lanai, so it's the screened bug-resistant cover that's over the top of the pool, and that prevents 95% of any debris that can go into the pool. You'll still get small bits of whatever, especially if it's a windy day, you'll get sand and dirt blown in, and you may get the little bugs, the no-see-ums, will still fit through the screen, so you may get some of those on the pool, but it makes the job 95% easier.
And it also lowers the temperature of the pool a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it keeps it cooler. You'll see guests that, don't want, or they want a better suntan, so they'll be, sunbathing outside of the screened area, yeah, and open to all of the bugs and everything else that Florida has. Right. But in essence, they'll still get an even tan.
Right, but the the cooler temperatures of the water mitigate some of the chlorine consumption, so your costs tend to be a little bit lower.
Yeah, exactly. You know, for 7 months of the year, you know, you can basically bet on a pool service costing, chemical wise, etc., maybe $10 a month. You know, and then you've got your own overheads of gas, insurances, and your own manpower, or if you're paying somebody to actually carry out the service on your behalf. So it's quite a profitable, especially if you're doing it yourselves. You know, and you've got a two-man band for argument's sake.
If you're doing it yourself, what are you making profit per pool percentage-wise if you do it right? I mean, that's a loaded question because you never know how big the pool is, or is it screened? But in general terms.
Well, I ran a spreadsheet on it years ago, and in basic terms, if you were actually paying an individual to do the pool, it would be costing you $47 a month to pay somebody to do it. So you can strip out just your cost of employment, and normally you're paying a 1099 as opposed to a W-2 and paying all of their deductions for them,
right,
on behalf of the corporation. But if you're paying on a 1099, you've just got to make sure that they just fulfill the criteria necessary for them to be eligible to be a 1099 employee.
Cool. So give me something on licensing, how the licensing actually works first, because it's kind of confusing, state, local, the acronyms throw people off.
Yeah, so I'm a CPC, a Certified Pool Contractor. So I'm actually a qualified pool builder. But you can also get the RPC, which is a regional pool contractor. And what that basically means is it's exactly the same exam that you take at state level, but you take it at county level. And which means that then you're only qualified to do work within that county. So if you take the exam in Osceola County with their examination board, then you can only carry out repairs, etc., in that county.
I've never heard of that one. When did that happen?
RPC's been around for decades.
Oh,
Colin Garbus that sold us Everclean Pools was an RPC.
Okay.
And I'm a CPC. So as I say, you know, and there's 3 different levels of contractor for pools under the CPC license. The first one is a service manager. So you can do all of the little repairs per se, leaks, etc., and a bit of pipe cutting, and renewal of pumps and motors, etc.
Stuff.
Yeah, and then you've also got the full pool contractor, the CPC residential, which means that they can do any repair and actually build residential pools. And then you've got a CPC commercial, who can do all of the residential repairs plus do commercial building and commercial repairs as well. However, as a CPC residential, which I am, I can also repair commercial pools. I can't build them. That's the only thing I can't do.
What does what's it take to do the licensing?
The licensing, you can actually do a course. It's run a couple of times a year by different organizations. The Florida Swimming Pool Association does it's either a 2 or 3 week course. Forgive me, I can't remember. I think it's a 2 week course. That 2 week course, which costs just under $2,000 to do, and it's a full-time course. You drive to Tampa or whatever. That's where I went, down to Tampa. And it's an attendance course. You get a little exam at the end. That actually gives you 3 years of education credits against doing 4 years of work experience with a company who actually has a CPC, a Certified Pool Contractor, who signs you off to say that you're competent to do the work. Once you've got that signature against your possible license, you can then take the exam. However, the only exam that you can take, which I took the commercial pool builders exam, which was a top exam, and passed that. But you can only take the service manager CPC qualification, because that's all you can be qualified for. Okay. Because it's your first license.
Right.
That license then lasts, or your examination result lasts for 3 years. After 2 years, you can then apply personally and sign yourself off if you've done the higher exam. And I did the commercial exam, so I could then sign myself off to be a residential pool contractor.
And it's
after 2 years.
And it's open book, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's an open book exam. You get given a 6-foot table. You take round about 20 different volumes from being 20 pages thick to others that are like 800 pages. You know, and you just lay your books out on one table and you do the exam on the, and it's a multi-guess, you know, it's A, B, C, or D is the answer. So
Welcome
all
to
the exams I've ever taken, if you don't know the answer, you answer C.
Yeah. What about the CPO? CPO is just a education thing, right?
CPO's an attendance course. It's 2 days. Most people do them. They're actually now, because of COVID-19, running online courses. Normally, you've got to go to a classroom so that you get seen. But they're now doing, like you, Mike, and myself. We're on Zoom, and they're actually doing classes through Zoom because people get to see everybody else, and they see that it's not just a name that is being issued a certificate.
Right.
It's actually an individual turning up and taking it.
Right. Okay. So, how do people get? You're still out there doing pool repairs. I know we've done with the service portion of it. You're getting ready to slow down and get old. How do people get a hold of you if they need repairs on pools? And you're mostly out in Kissimmee and Davenport and Claremont, right?
Yeah, where the Four Corners area. We'll travel to do most repairs. Veterans Pools we now own, having started that up last year.
Okay.
And we're keeping ourselves busy. People still call me up. I don't advertise. We've never paid for advertisements with anybody, whether it be online or whatever. We've always had websites. And all my details, Mike.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to save this and put it on YouTube and send it out to all my folks. Pete, I appreciate it.
You're still there, Mike. You haven't moved.
I'm here. It's phasing up.